Last summer, I did a video in the bedroom upstairs where I stated Carolina was going to make the playoffs. Oh, I liked Scott Darling going there. I thought that was a fantastic move. He'd been the backup in Chicago for a long time, and now he's finally going to get his chance to win a Stanley Cup or get in the playoffs and do it himself. Prove that he's not under the shadow of Corey Crawford anymore. Well, the good news is he's not under the shadow of Corey Crawford anymore. Let's get into Carolina. And it's interesting that I'm doing the Carolina video the same day I'm doing Calgary because they made a big trade with one another this summer, and they're both in the same spot. 83 points by Carolina, not far off from where Calgary was last year. Down from 87. Well, that's only a 4-point difference. And then they were only 1 point below that. See, there's a consistent mediocrity with Carolina. They are that frustrating, good enough not to be horrible, but not good enough to make the playoffs, and not horrible enough that they're going to get those top draft picks. But wait. After 9 years of not making the playoffs, and only making the playoffs 13 of 39 years, they get second place in the draft lottery, which causes Brian Burke to lose his mind. And he's been very vocal about this, and I'm going to state it on this video. So the statement has been that because Carolina finished higher up, they really shouldn't have a chance for a top prospect. I would counter with this. It's been 9 years since they made the playoffs. They've suffered a lot. It's not like they're Tampa last year who missed the playoffs by a couple points. They're going to be back in the playoffs. And hey, look, they're back in the playoffs and they're a contender. This is Carolina. Okay, now they got rid of their coach, Bill Peters, who went to Calgary because there's a whole trade-off between Calgary and Carolina. And now it's up to Brind'Amour. Brind'Amour has this unenviable task of trying to turn around 9 seasons of mediocrity, where the team's been bad, probably not bad enough, and now they've got enough decent prospects that you really don't want to see them fall apart. But Don Waddell's brought in as GM, and I've there's a video on the channel on Don Waddell and my opinion on Don Waddell and his track record in Atlanta, and I'm really surprised that they forced out Francis and brought in Waddell. Very surprised. Francis was doing a slow burn, and I get that the owner said enough. I get it, and yet I don't look at this team and say, well, Waddell's turned them into a contender his first year. Top 5 cap hits. Jordan Stahl's still at the top. Dougie Hamilton, who was brought in as number 2. And the much discussed Jeff Skinner, who doesn't show in the top 6 on this chart, but likely makes it there if he makes it to the season as a member of the Hurricanes. Do they trade him? Because here's the thing. He's UFA next summer, so I could definitely justify putting Skinner in here and dropping Ferland down to third line duty. But odds are, probably doesn't happen. The thing is, Skinner and what I'm thinking is that Williams probably drops down to third line too. If you have Skinner and Williams on your third line, you can score goals. Lots. That's not really their problem. Slavin's number 4 on the cap hit parade, and Justin Falk is number 5, and there's been a lot of rumors about Falk being sent out of town as well. Although I would think that with Hanifin gone, those should have died off, mostly. Plus player, Jacob Slavin, to me, is the plus player because I learned, not this season, but the year before, just how good he is. It may not show in points. He may never get nominated for a Norris Trophy, but you know what? He's pretty damn good. Top 6 forwards, Aho, who could play center. Stahl, if Stahl gets bumped out of the center spot, I'm not sure. Do you move him down, and then does Rask move down to potentially 4th line? Because if Nakash comes in, or Nekash, or Netskash, Nakas, I'll go with Nakas. If Nakas comes in and wins that second line center spot, but then Stahl gets bumped down to, say, 3rd line, does Victor Rask move to 4th? Does he move to the wing? Teravainen's in there, Ferland, and potentially Skinner. And, of course, the big name, Andrei Svechnikov. Can Andrei Svechnikov be just as good as he's supposed to be? That he would usually be a number one draft pick, but Dahlin was so special and so important as a blue liner that Svechnikov's the number two, and there was never any question about him being number two. I remember reading rumors about, well, Carolina might take Zadina, and it's like, no, nobody's passing on Svechnikov other than the team at the top, and that's because they can get Dahlin. Nobody was passing on Svechnikov. Top four defensemen, of course, Slavin, Falk, Hamilton, and either DeHaan or Pesce. I prefer Pesce, personally, over DeHaan. I would think if DeHaan plays bottom two and Pesce plays in that middle spot, I would be happier. But, again, it's left side, right side defenseman, right? Anyways, I would imagine Pesce might get more minutes than DeHaan, but he may get those on special teams. We'll see, right? But their blue line is good. It's not spectacular. And this is where things start to fall apart. I can see this team scoring a lot of goals. I'm not sure how many they'll prevent. And then we get to goaltending. And this is where your minus player comes in. So you got Darling and Mrazek here. Now, Darling was an excellent goaltender before last season. He can bounce back. Mrazek, 2 years ago, was seen as an excellent young prospect in net. He technically could bounce back. I'm a little more discouraged with Peter Mrazek after his bout with Philly. And it felt like a fight, that's why I'm saying bout. Because he was having a mediocre season for Detroit. He'd have the odd really good game that made us think, hey, maybe he's going to pull it out, and then no. And then he had the decent start with Philly, and you're like, hey, he looks pretty good in Philly, and then it all fell apart. And I don't think Philly had any intention of bringing him back when they traded for him. I think it was a pure rental. But I think he made their choice of not keeping him easier than it should have been. Additions to the team: Ferland, Martinook, Hamilton, DeHaan, Mrazek. I don't look at what they've added and say that should make up the 10 to 15 points that they're going to need to make the playoffs this year. The Metro was mediocre in the second half of the season. It's funny because the Metro, the first half of 2017-18, looked fantastic. And we were all crowing about how great the Metro was. And by the end of the year, it was, that's the Metro. The Metro's crap. If the Metro's mediocre, they have a better chance. But I never underestimate Carolina's ability to screw it up now. I can't. Potential rookies, you have Svechnikov, you have a free agent they signed, 24-year-old Manalainen, Saku Manalainen, and Warren Fogle, who in a very brief call-up got a lot of people talking, so I thought I'd better throw him up here because, Carolina fans were excited about him, and he played pretty well. The last 5 years of playoffs are pretty simple, aren't they? Because they haven't made the playoffs in 9 seasons. This would be 10. They're in on record territory. And that's why the predictions the channel has made are all the more distressing. 0.6% say first. 0.8% say second. 3.8% say third. That means that there's a grand total of about 5%, 5 out of 100, that think that this team can be top 3 in the division. And that's not a good sign. And of course, a lot of people are going to be looking at that goaltending tandem. And if you're a Hurricanes fan, I get it. And here's the thing. Again, last summer, I was predicting these guys were going to make the playoffs. But I saw enough of them during the season that I was like, wow, what in the hell was I thinking? And it makes it harder and harder for me to justify it. Fourth place, 10.7% see them in fourth. 19.8% see them in fifth. Sixth seems to be the sweet spot with everybody. 34.3%. 16.3% say seventh. 12.8% say eighth. And there's really kind of consensus on this one. Kind of, sort of. The channel seems to think sixth. So what do I think? Well, I have them in seventh. Again, I'm with 16%. Isn't that weird? I seem to be with 16% on these things. 12.8% of people think I have them too high. And there's another 5% that are like, hey, we're going to be top 3 in the division, and you guys are going to be so wrong. And there are ways to make us wrong. If Darling manages to perform really well, if DeHaan finds his game and manages not to get hurt, if Hamilton becomes the player that he was early in his career in Boston. I remember early in Boston, loved Dougie's game. Even though the points are still there, he hasn't been that same defenseman. But there's too many things I look at with this lineup and I say they might need another year. And again, it feels like Buffalo. It really does. You're looking, oh, I could see it. But they need this top the top 3 lines to all gel. There's a lot of new names in there. That can take a while. So if that takes, say, till the end of October, well, they're probably done. Carolina is not a team that can necessarily storm back into this. And 2 years ago, well, yeah, technically 2 seasons ago, because we're qualifying 2017-18 as last season. In 2016-17, they went on quite a tear. And it was that tear at the end of the season made me say, you know what, these guys can make the playoffs. But I'm not in that same position this year. This year they fell off at the end. And they really... I don't know. And again, maybe I'm nervous because Don Waddell's in as GM. Maybe I'm nervous because they have a rookie coach that's trying to figure this out. And maybe I'm nervous because they've replaced a lot of players and there's no guarantee that there's going to be cohesion between these players right away. When you're bringing in guys who are expected to be top 4 defensemen, you're bringing in guys who are expected to be top 6 forwards. You potentially could have 2 rookies in your top pairings. I don't even have Nakash, Nekash, Netscash, Kneecap. I don't have him as the potential rookie because he's going to be in there. And I guess Svechnikov I shouldn't have up there either. There's a lot of youth. There's a lot of excitement. Certainly, if you're a Carolina fan, you should be excited. But I can't get past some of it. And that's on me. And I apologize for that. But there are just some things I see with this team that make me a little nervous. But hopefully I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I want Carolina back in the playoffs. Desperately want to see the Hurricanes make the playoffs. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.